Have you ever wondered why, even having access to the same information and the same opportunities, some people build empires while others spend their entire lives starting over from zero? The difference is not in talent, but in a secret habit that unites physical discipline with spiritual clarity. Most people believe that prosperity is an event of luck, but the truth is that it is the result of a daily frequency that you still have not learned to access. Today, through the story of Natan, I will show you how your lack of consistency is blocking the blessings that should already be in your hand. And take the opportunity and subscribe to the channel to open your mind to prosperity. Because what you are going to hear will change the way you wake up tomorrow. Natan was the king of beginnings. Every Monday he had a new plan. He was going to start going to the gym, he was going to read the Bible every day, and he was finally going to organize his finances. In the first week, he was a rocket. In the second, a beetle without gasoline. In the third, he was already back on the couch, feeling guilty and like a failure. Natan's pain was not a lack of willpower, it was lack of alignment. He tried to change the outside without changing the frequency inside. He was trapped in the cycle of cheap motivation, which is like a straw fire. It shines a lot, but it doesn't warm anyone's winter. Psychology explains that Natan was a slave to immediate dopamine. He sought the pleasure of saying he was going to do it, instead of the pleasure of finishing what he started. Spiritually, Natan suffered from inconstancy, a breach that drained all his vital energy. Every time he gave up on a small habit, like morning prayer or the expense spreadsheet, he sent a message to his subconscious: I am not reliable. The hidden hook here is that prosperity requires trust. If you yourself don't trust your word, why would the universe or the market trust resources in your hands? The confrontation here is that Natan used his sensitivity, or tiredness, as an excuse for his lack of character with his own dreams. He waited to feel like it in order to act, without understanding that discipline is, in fact, the greatest act of self-love that exists. Natan's mediocrity was fueled by the belief that great men are superhuman, when in fact they are just ordinary people who learn to be consistent in the little things. Natan needed to understand that the key to abundance is not in what you do once a month, but in what you sustain when no one is watching. The turning point happened when Natan realized he was losing the war before even getting out of bed. He woke up at the last minute, checking his phone and absorbing the chaos of the world before speaking with the Creator or with his own purpose. He lived in reactive mode, just putting out fires. That was when he discovered the secret habit, the first sacred hour. He understood that discipline does not begin in the execution of work, but in the preparation of the spirit. Natan decided that the first lights of the day would be used to align his frequency with abundance, through prayer, reading, and unshakable focus. Spiritually, Natan began to practice what we call first fruits. He gave the first part of his time to what truly mattered. By establishing this daily discipline, he began to close the breaches through which his prosperity was escaping. Neuroscience calls this a transition ritual. He was signaling to his brain that he was now the master of his routine, not its slave. The hidden hook is that by mastering the first hour of the day, Natan gained the mental authority to master the rest of the day, his finances, and his future. Natan's confrontation was realizing that his life was a mess because his soul was out of control. He stopped asking for luck and started asking for self-mastery. He understood that prosperity is a flow that runs through clean and organized channels. When he put order in his morning, order began to appear in his bank account and in his relationships. Natan discovered that discipline is not a prison. It is the key to the cell. He stopped being Natan of beginnings to become Natan of consistency. And it was in this solid ground that his wealth finally began to take root. The psychology of prosperity teaches that the world does not reward isolated effort, but the accumulation of direction. Natan began to realize that by maintaining his first sacred hour, he was not just praying or reading, he was recalibrating his worthiness thermostat. Before, he felt like an imposter when thinking about large amounts. But now every morning one against the alarm clock was concrete proof that he was a man of his word. The hidden hook here is that daily discipline destroys self-sabotage. Natan stopped leaking money on immediate pleasures because he was already filled by the spiritual pleasure of being in command. This new posture immediately reflected in his business. Natan stopped accepting crumbs and working with clients who drained his energy because he now had the power of no. Spiritually, he understood the law of sowing and reaping. He stopped asking for a money tree and started asking for the discipline to take care of the seed every day. The result was a mental clarity that his competitors, lost in chaos and procrastination, did not possess. While others acted out of desperation, Natan acted out of purpose, and the market always pays more for those who know exactly where they are going. The final confrontation of this stage was seeing old friends move away, labeling him as obsessed. But Natan no longer sought the approval of those who were stuck in time. He understood that abundance is selective and requires you to abandon the frequency of complaint in order to enter the frequency of active gratitude. Natan's mediocrity died permanently when he saw that his discipline was not a burden, but his greatest financial asset. He discovered that wealth is only the external echo of a soul that learned to govern itself in the silence of dawn. When the first major financial results arrived, Natan faced the most dangerous enemy of prosperity: accumulated fatigue. Psychology explains that when we move from scarcity to comfort, our brain tries to reactivate the old procrastination software, whispering, "You've already fought too much. Now you deserve to relax and lower your guard." This is the hook of premature reward. Natan felt the temptation to skip his sacred hour and go back to sleep just 5 more minutes, believing that success was already guaranteed. But he realized that procrastination is not laziness. It is an identity crisis trying to pull you back to the average. Spiritually, Natan understood that fatigue is the ground where the greatest battles against scarcity are fought. He stopped seeing discipline as a task and began to see it as spiritual armor. He realized that on the days when he least felt like being consistent, that was exactly when he most needed to reaffirm his authority. The confrontation here was admitting that his past self was still lurking, waiting for a small crack of carelessness to regain control of his bank account and his routine. Natan learned the technique of the 5-second immediate action. He did not give the brain time to negotiate with mediocrity. This breaking of the procrastination cycle generated unshakable authority. Natan discovered that true prosperity does not come from doing extraordinary things once in a while, but from doing the ordinary in an extraordinary way every day, even under pressure. The pain of daily effort became small compared to the pain of the regret of almost making it. Natan stopped asking himself if he felt like acting and started asking, "Would the man I want to be today do this?" By aligning his faith with his execution, he turned discipline into an instinct, and what was once a sacrifice became his non-negotiable lifestyle. Natan reached a level of stability that most people only dream of, but it was here that he understood the final secret of the abundance mindset. Prosperity that stays dammed up ends up rotting. Psychology explains that human beings reach a happiness ceiling when they focus only on themselves, generating what we call survival selfishness. Natan realized that for his wealth and discipline to keep growing, he needed to shift the focus from having to overflowing. The hidden hook here is that the universe does not deliver rivers of resources to those who are a closed bucket, but to those who are an open channel. Spiritually, Natan began applying the law of service. He understood that his morning discipline and his wealth were not only for his comfort, but to empower other people. He began investing in the development of those around him, mentoring collaborators and helping his community with the same precision he used in his spreadsheets. By doing this, Natan experienced the neuroscience of generosity. The act of helping others released levels of satisfaction and purpose that no luxury purchase had ever managed to deliver. He stopped being a collector of coins to become a distributor of destinies. Natan's final confrontation was realizing that true wealth is measured by what you leave in people's lives when you leave the room. He understood that his daily discipline was the example his children and his team needed to also leave mediocrity behind. Natan stopped worrying about whether he had enough and began focusing on how much more can I generate to bless the world. By aligning his ambition with the common good, he broke the last barrier of scarcity. Natan was no longer just a rich man. He was a force of nature, a prosperous man whose roots were faith and whose fruits were the freedom of everyone around him. What differentiated Natan from the almost Natan to the empire? Natan was the courage to win the first hour of the day and the humility to align his spirit with his routine. If you felt uncomfortable with Natan's inconsistency at the beginning, it is because you saw your own shadow there. The question that remains for you now is, how long will you keep letting your prosperity leak through the drains of procrastination and fatigue? The spiritual key is in your hand, but the lock only opens with your action. If you are tired of being the king of beginnings and want to become the master of consistency, your commitment starts now. Do not wait for Monday. Do not wait for motivation to arrive. Start with 10 minutes of focus and prayer tomorrow morning and show your brain who is in charge of your life. If you are ready to seal this commitment with your future and your purpose, write in the comments. My discipline is non-negotiable. Subscribe to shield your mindset and not miss the next prosperity keys that we will release here. Remember, the world is full of intelligent people, but the top belongs to the consistent. See you next time.